So welcome back to Chat Communications Happenings and Trends. So once again, Hillary Clinton is back in the news, but really not for anything she said recently, but from an interview that she gave last year. In it, she questioned whether Cambridge Analytica, the firm who is under scrutiny for mining data that helped them target voters for a propaganda campaign in the 2016 election. Clinton said this while promoting her book. She stated, "The real question is, how did the Russians know how to target their messages so precisely to undecided voters in Wisconsin or Michigan or Pennsylvania? So if they were getting advice from, let's say, Cambridge Analytica or someone else about, okay, here are the 12 voters in this town in Wisconsin. That's whose Facebook pages you need to be on to send these messages. That indeed would be very disturbing." So Cambridge Analytica is a British-based political consulting firm that conservatives like Robert Mercer and Steve Bannon, who served as White House chief strategists in the first 7 months of the Trump administration, were involved in. The firm boasted that in 2015, it mined data from 50 million Facebook users and was able to target users with ads. Trump's campaign started using Cambridge Analytica in 2016. However, Cambridge Analytica has claimed that the allegations that they did this in a collaboration with Russia is false. Bannon, who was the one that reached out to Trump about the capabilities of Cambridge Analytica, of course, tried to distance himself from the dirty tricks that Cambridge Analytica performed by placing it at the feet of their parent company, the SLC Group, a private British behavioral research and strategic communications company. He stated, "That's SCL. Not a penny of Robert Mercer's money went into SCL. That's all staffed by British guys from Oxford and Cambridge. CA is the data scientists. The Guardian and the Observer tell you that in about the 10th paragraph." Okay, so Cambridge Analytica has now become a focus of Mueller's investigation into the Trump campaign in the 2016 election, but that is now expanding to Facebook as well. So no one knows exactly when Facebook became aware of what was going on, since the question first arose about these mining tactics way back in 2015. But they definitely knew by January 2017, and instead of letting their users actually know directly what had happened, they went to Cambridge Analytica and asked them just to delete the material that they had mined from GSR. So GSR is another British company that obtained data through a personality quiz Facebook users would take and unknowingly grant CSR permission to gather certain data from their page as well as from their friends' pages. So GSR is who sold the data to Cambridge Analytica, which provides Facebook an out from having to claim that they knew what was going on prior to January of 2017. And this is like shady on so many fronts, right? You've got a company that basically mined people's Facebook information without their permission. It's one thing that if you say, yeah, you can, in order to use this particular app, I give you permission to look at my data. It's another thing to say, and my friend's data, which they knew nothing about. And there are people on Facebook that go through great lengths to keep their information private. Oh, yeah. But they can't control their friends and family members. And this is so wrong on so many levels, so wrong. Not to mention that they said that they were going to utilize the data for research for academic purposes, academic purposes, not to get this information and for private profits is what they utilize the data for. They didn't use it for academic research. So you've got the utilization for private profits, the permission issues, and then they utilized it to basically attack users, right? To try to influence their behavior and influence their vote. So three fronts in which it's completely, utterly wrong that I could just name off the top of my head. It's just alarming to me that this is where we are. You know, that I used to do academic research, and we had to go through and it was behavioral, and we had to go through such lengths to just make sure that everything was safe, private, that all of the people you knew what they were getting themselves into, and if they decided to terminate the research at any point, they could. And you had to let them. You couldn't say, okay, are you sure you want? You couldn't push them. You had to say, as soon as they said, I'm done, you had to let them go. And so there was nothing that these users could do because they already had the data. So they couldn't reach out to the company either and be like, hey, don't use my data anymore. Please erase it, because they had no knowledge of what was going on in the background. And so to say that this was utilized for academic purposes is gross too, is basically so wrong, because you have to have permission. They have to have like literal consent. So they couldn't mine like your friend's data. They couldn't keep it. They had to have a point of contact if ever you wanted the data to be removed for academic purposes. And if that was not available, then they were not using it for academic purposes, which I guarantee you it was not available. I'm so happy I was not on Facebook during that time in which that happened. I had deactivated my account, and actually I'm probably going to deactivate my account again. Janet, do you have anything to add?
So it's wrong on so many levels, just like you said. I mean, we're already being targeted for ads. I remember the first time that I got an ad. It was like a shirt. I was on Facebook, and I jumped out of Facebook. And whatever. I was looking at shirts, and I came back into Facebook, and for like 24 hours, I was like taunted by the shirt, like to buy the shirt. But that's consumer goods. Now they're getting into politics, and they're going to attempt to manipulate the data into getting us to vote the way that they want. It's pretty unnerving, and it's a gross misuse of social media and our data and our friends' data.
I mean, I know, no doubt, that the decisions during the 2016 election that I did decide to make were my own, because I actually wasn't on a social media platform during that time. And so I think I was probably one of the rare exceptions, especially for people my age, that just didn't really utilize social media. But for everybody else, it's kind of like, well, what influenced me? What didn't influence me? Like, were my decisions completely my own? Makes you question that. I would be interested in wondering the what decisions were their own for the people that had voted Obama twice and then flipped to Trump. I would be very interested in wondering, how social media may or may not have influenced that decision. Now, does that mean that the country isn't in a place where they're tired of neoliberalism? No, I'm sick of neoliberalism, and I wasn't a part of this social media attack. And I think you can be reasonably frustrated because people don't have jobs. I think that you see kind of the job employment rate at 4%, unemployment rate, at 4%. But that's apparently a very deceptive number, and it's probably more around 14%, which is quite high. And that's a decent amount of the country that's more than welcome to be frustrated with the way things are going and the way things have been going. The fact that student loan debt is at an all-time high, and trillions of dollars of student loan debt that has prevented an entire generation from creating families, from buying houses, because of the fact that they owe the government so much money. That's a reasonable thing to be frustrated about. But at the same time, what about the people that don't have those constraints, that are equally frustrated by neoliberalism policies? I would imagine that if you don't have some sort of burden on you, you're probably just happy with with the way things have been going. But for everybody else, which is a large swath of the country, they're going to be pissed, and reasonably so. But how I wonder if it's more about like getting them more angry about it than they would have naturally been, versus it kind of being in the back of their minds and them thinking about it and just being a little bit frustrated, but it could get better in a few years, versus I am angry, I am done, I just want to see the whole system blow up. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to vote for Trump.
So going back to who was influenced and on what they were influenced by and all that. I mean, we're never going to get the answers on that. We're just never going to know. And it gets frustrating, so frustrating that, you know, people want to point the finger now and go, you were influenced because you still support Bernie, so you had to be influenced. First of all, a lot of Bernie supporters voted for Hillary, so that doesn't even make sense. Second of all, like, I mean, for people like me, I mean, I'm not a Democrat. I'm like Bernie, I'm not a Democrat. But I mean, I voted third party, you know, most of my voting life. I mean, there was, yeah, okay, 3 votes for Democrats and 2 I really regret. So, so, I mean, yeah, I mean, I wasn't influenced. Could people have been influenced? Probably, but then again, it was happening on the other side. I mean, there were Democrats doing the same thing, the same thing. They were, you know, I mean, we had Correct the Record with their, you know, their initial startup of $1 million that they were going to correct the record. I mean, all they did was push out propaganda. I mean, they weren't telling the truth. They weren't correcting anything. There wasn't anything. There wasn't any stories that people were saying that they were, you know, oh no, this is not what happened. That's not how the Correct the Record worked. I mean, Correct the Record, that whole time was, they put out their, you know, their it had we say they must have been daily talking points because they would all be on the same spiel that whole day. they'd all, or at least they'd all jump on and start talking about Bernie's parka and that it was a $80,000 parka. I don't know what his jacket was a $700 jacket, and they were all up in arms over this. I mean, and so that was the talking point for that day. That was a fun day. But anyhow, then you have like Sally. I mean, Sally Albright with her bots. I mean, she wants to claim they're not bots, but they're bots. And I mean, so I mean, these are things that we've seen. I mean, I'm sure they used analytical groups just like Trump's campaign did, just probably like, I mean, the GOP itself probably did. So the Democrats and Hillary's campaign, they all use these things. They all use this data. And we just have to be aware of it. And I mean, it's going to be annoying to now have to listen to people say, see, you know, Hillary was the right president. She was the president. Trump went on a 1, when we know because we watched this all play out, that both sides are playing dirty and both sides were using these tactics to get to people and manipulate them into voting for one side or the other, the, you know, the lesser evil or evil, I don't know, whatever. But I mean, it, you know, it backfired on the Democrats. We probably wouldn't even be talking about this if Hillary was in office right now anyways. So I don't know.
Because I mean, we're such social animals. We kind of want to coalesce with the group as opposed to just not, or being outside of that. And so again, the more, even in the social media realm, the more likes and retweets something may get, the more likely you are to kind of coalesce with that, just because that's how our brains operate. We want to be part of a cohesive group. And so that's why these bots and things like that are so dangerous, because they do give the appearance of inflating something that may not be real, that isn't a real phenomenon, that this is not really 20,000 independent thinkers. This is really just 20,000 bots made to look like it's independent thinkers to get to drive influence and drive the discussion, drive the narrative in a certain direction. And so, yes, you're right. The Democratic Party employs these tactics too. I think the problem, I don't have a solution for this. I wish I did. I guess a good practice may be just to do a social media blackout. But then it's kind of, you're left with what the mainstream media narrative is at that point. And that can be equally as damaging because they aren't interested really in breaking up the duopoly. They aren't really interested in people. They're more interested in their profits. And so they're going to drive a narrative that best serves their purpose. And so they will not necessarily oppose Trump's agenda, right? Because they want access to him and to his cabinet members, so that they can do interviews and kind of get that scoop first and things like that. So it's really not about serving the people's interests with them. Is there a solution here? I'm very glad that there are some smart people, smarter than me, that can at least find out if a user is utilizing bots, right? But it still takes time to find that out. And so the damage may already have been done by the time that it's discovered.
Yep.
Wish I had a solution, but I don't. So thanks for watching Chat Communications Happenings and Trends, and we will see you next time.